back to the Metro. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. The dizzying speed of policy changes under the Trump administration has created anxiety and uncertainty for a lot of people. This is especially true for some vulnerable young people like teens who come from households of mixed immigration status. In the week since Trump took office, he's made swift changes to the country's immigration system and vowed to deport more people. In immigration communities like Southwest Detroit, some kids are staying home from school out of fear.
It's also been tough for young people already struggling to get by and fit in. Trump has used ugly rhetoric to talk about transgender people, and he's ended DEI efforts at the federal level. That's had a cascading effect, with some companies following suit. The president has also said he will shut down the U.S. Department of Education. Now, a lot of education policy happens at the state and local level, but the Department of Education manages student loans and grants, and it monitors how schools are treating vulnerable kids like those with disabilities.
That's right, Tia. So we want to better understand how this changing climate is affecting young people in Detroit. So we're joined by Amani Foster with 482 Forward. That's an advocacy organization that works with families and kids in the city. Amani, thanks for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you so much for having me, Robin.
So first, before we discuss this political moment and how young Detroiters are responding to it, could you give us some background on the youth organizing collective at 482 Forward? I'm wondering what age range of kids you all work with and what some of the projects kids have focused on have been in the recent past.
So the 482 Forward Youth Collective actually launched in 2010. Actually 2015, sorry. It's our 10-year anniversary this year. And we started from a few group of students. There were about 6 or 7 of us, and we decided that we felt like students should have a say in what was going on politically, especially when it came to education in the schools in Detroit. And so we run our own campaigns. Our youth collective, I say we because I'm one of the founding members, but I actually don't work with the youth collective too much nowadays. We have 2 fearless leaders, as I call them, Juanita Zuniga and Lindsay Matson, and they are amazing. And they work with our youth. They meet bi-weekly every other week. Right now, they're building up a campaign around school facilities. So they did some surveys with some schools across the city to ask them like what was the most resonating idea with what students wanted to see a change in. And overwhelmingly, it was the school facilities, whether it was mold, right? Whether it was school food, whether it was holes in the ceiling, whether it was ceiling tile issues, whether it was not having heat or air, lots of things that were coming up around school facilities. And so normally with our campaigns, we take a cycle that goes from listening to doing a little bit of community research, which then leads them to taking action. So right now they are in the research phase and will be taking action soon. So we have students that come from 8th grade all the way up to the 12th grade, and they're amazing.
Amani, I want to go back to something you said, which is that you are one of the founding members of this youth organizing collective. So you started out with 482 Forward when you were in high school, doing some of the same kind of work that you're helping to lead today. And that was roughly, 8 years ago?
Yes, exactly. And so I started the youth collective as a high school student at Renaissance during a time where our students were taking action because our teachers were taking action. And so the youth collective at that point was really made up of the students of parents that were taking action at the same time. And so my mom was a member. And so I was always at the meetings. And after a while, we were like, this is crazy that we're all here and we're not doing anything. And so we started going through different training to learn about community organizing, to learn about how to write our own testimonies, use our voice, that kind of thing.
Yeah, when you say taking action, so you're talking about writing testimonies. What else are you talking about?
Yeah, sure. So we have done protests in our community. I remember one time we did a art exhibit, which was called an unresource fair. And so it was like a resource fair, but what we did was have art projects that showed the lack of resources in our school. Every time that there's a school board election, we do community listening. And so the community listening would look like maybe we've interviewed like Gretchen Whitmer before she became governor. She actually did a community interview with us. I remember being a student at the time working on that. We interviewed all the gubernatorial candidates that would speak to us. And then we had a forum. And so we do a lot of different things to get active, but also to get an understanding of like who the adults will be electing and then how that will have an impact on our life.
With this kind of hyper focus that you've had on education in Detroit, Amani, and being so intimately involved as a student organizer, now as an adult organizer and community advocate, can you just quickly summarize for us how you see things having changed in, let's say, the last decade? Are you hopeful? Have you noticed a lot of positive changes? I mean, the story of Detroit Public Schools is one of great tumult and chaos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll answer that twofold, on the side of the organizing and on the side of the what we're organizing around. And so what I'll say is that I definitely see a consistency in young people wanting to stay involved, wanting to get involved. I see a consistency in young people just 100% committed to changing the world around them for not just themselves, but for even the future, for their younger siblings, for their family members, for their cousins, all of that. And so, yeah, I see a lot of consistency when it's there. I see a consistency in the adults who are doing this work, trying to pour into our young people. But at the same time, in the education field, I think that we've seen a lot of wins with 482 Forward, but I also think that there are a lot of things that we still want to see change, especially when it comes to funding. We know our schools are $4.5 billion underfunded in Michigan, and that's something that I've been saying since I was 16, right? And we haven't seen a big shift in the funding model in that long. At the same time, it feels like we're a little bit in a time warp with the current presidency, right, and the current administration, and just seeing the different things that they want to do to remove funding at the same time as we're fighting for more funding. So, yeah, I think I see a lot of consistency with the work that's being done and with young people. But at the same time, I don't see the change that I think we all are fighting so strongly to see, which is to have a real community voice be the main thing that's prioritized when it comes to how our schools are funded, how they're run, what they look like, how they impact our students, and all of that.
You're listening to The Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. We're speaking with Imani Foster of 482 Forward. That's an advocacy organization that works with families and kids in the city. We're learning about how some Detroit kids are responding in this political moment. Imani, you talked about it just a little bit there, this new administration. 482 Forward has been involved in a lot of actions since Trump took office. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the things you've been working on?
Yeah, for sure. So one thing that I can say for sure that 482 Forward has been working on is something that we've consistently been doing since last year, which is our Tip the Scales campaign. And so we believe fundamentally that people power should have more power than money power, than governing power, than anything else. The people that live in the city, that live in the state, that live in the country should have more of a say. And so we've been keeping consistent with our Tip the Scales campaign. So far this year, we actually have a lunch and learn coming up. It'll be next week on February 21st. And so we've been doing a lot of power building to make sure that we get some elected officials there, some state reps there, some school board members there, so we can do some communication one-on-one. But also we've been doing a little bit of some response work as well. And so with the announcement of Linda McMahon being the potential and probably the sure candidate for the new Secretary of Education, we actually took some of our members and even one of our students and two of our members who were recently students but are now on our young adult team to Washington, D.C. for an event that an organization called Popular Democracy held in Washington, D.C., right on the Capitol, where we did kind of a speak out against Linda McMahon and against a lot of the new policies that we've been hearing might be coming forward, have been coming forward, that are a harm to our most vulnerable students and our schools in general. That's just one thing, but we've also been doing, in collaboration with an organization called My Student's Dream, we have been doing some response to Know Your Rights trainings. And so we've been providing Know Your Rights trainings to families, to parents, to students. We've been working on making sure that we get it up on our social media, as well as sharing with our members so that they can share with their friends and family just how to stay protected in this time. We see that there's been a lot of just racial profiling, whether folks have their documentation or not. Right now, it's just really a hard time for our immigrant community, our immigrant families. And so we've just been doing a lot of Know Your Rights training, but then also just bringing in our community to not just be trying to respond, but also to be thinking about what do we do and how do we stay consistent and not get distracted in this crazy time. So, yeah.
Imani, in the last about minute or so we have you here, you talked about it just a little bit, but definitely Southwest Detroit, our immigrant communities throughout Southwest Detroit as well. We know a lot of kids have been missing school. We know a lot has been going on. You just talked about the Know Your Rights training that you all have been doing with My Student Stream. So can you just talk a little bit about the press conference today that you guys are going to be participating in about Trump's potential executive order to shut down the Department of Education? What are some of the implications of that, and what are most Detroit kids feeling right now, especially those who are feeling it really, really heaviest in Southwest Detroit?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tia, for that question. So we have a press conference starting in less than 30 minutes. We will be having State Superintendent Michael Rice, as well as State Representative Regina Weiss, as well as a few parents, and Terrence Martin from the AFT Michigan, and just a few other community organizers on, just to stand as a united front and to show the federal administration that we don't agree with this decision. We know how important the Federal Department of Education is. They provide funding for some of our most vulnerable students, as I said, for our special needs students, for our low-income students. They supplement a lot of funding that the state can't cover. And we know, right, that Detroit Public Schools Community District definitely receives funds from the federal government. On top of that, they also just provide a safe haven, right? A space for people to report discrimination, whether it's race, whether it's gender, whether it's sexuality. They provide a space for that to be reported and dealt with. And we know that that could pose a threat if we just lose all of a sudden, right, access to a space like the Department of Education. And so at 11 o'clock a.m., we'll be hopping on a Zoom call just to hear from some state legislators, some local officials, and also some community members who would just be directly impacted by such a drastic move. And we would definitely love to see you on. If you want to find the link, it's on our Action Network link. And yeah, we would love to see you on as well.
Imani Foster is with 482 Forward. That's an advocacy organization that works with families and kids in the city. Imani, we will be in touch with you to get more updates.
Thank you.
Up next, Clark Park is one of Detroit's great public spaces. We'll talk about all the programming that's going on there and why it's so special to city residents. This is the Metro. Stay with us.